The day of my grandmother's funeral was grey and heavy, the kind of sky that pressed down like a weight on the shoulders. I clutched my mother's hand as we stood at the edge of the grave, watching the woman who had raised her, who had raised me, in so many ways, lowered into the earth. Around us, the relatives swarmed like vultures dressed in black. My uncle whispered loudly enough for me to hear, "She left nothing but debts." "What a shame," his wife sniffed, eyes sharp as they darted toward the house visible. In the distance, my grandmother's old, creaking home that had stood for decades. "She should have sold it years ago," another cousin muttered. "Now it's just a burden." I felt my mother flinch beside me. Her eyes were red, swollen from days of crying, but she said nothing. She never did. She had always been the quiet one, the one everyone overlooked, the one left with scraps while her siblings claimed everything. When the prayers ended, I expected a somber dispersal, a quiet respect for the dead. Instead, the family broke into little knots of chatter, already discussing what to do with the house, who might take what, who deserved more. Their voices carried on the wind like knives. I stayed silent, but inside, anger bubbled. How quickly love dissolved when possessions came into question. That evening, we walked into the old house. The air was thick with dust and memory, the wallpaper peeling, the scent of lavender still clinging faintly to the curtains. My mother sank into a chair, exhausted, while I wandered the rooms. The house didn't feel empty. It felt watchful, as though my grandmother had left more behind than anyone realized. And in that moment, as laughter from my relatives drifted up the street, a strange certainty settled in my chest. They were wrong. She hadn't left us with nothing. She had left us something they weren't meant to find. The first night in my grandmother's house was restless. The walls creaked like they were breathing, and every gust of wind rattled the windows as if someone was trying to get in. I lay awake staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering if maybe my relatives were right. Maybe the house was just an old shell, holding nothing but dust and debt. But morning light has a way of peeling back illusions. When I padded barefoot into the sitting room, I noticed things I had missed before. The photographs on the mantel were uneven, gaps where frames had clearly been removed. My grandmother's favourite clock, the one that chimed every hour, had stopped exactly at midnight, and on her knitstand, perfectly centered, was a heavy Bible, its leather cover worn from years of use. I touched it gently. My grandmother had read from it every morning, lips moving silently, eyes full of faith. Something about the way it was placed, a deliberate, careful, made me pause. "Amara," my mother called softly from the kitchen, her voice tired. "Your uncle is coming by later. He said he wants to look around." I swallowed hard. I already knew what that meant. He wasn't coming to mourn. He was coming to hunt. Sure enough, by afternoon, my uncle and his wife arrived, their footsteps echoing through the halls, as they opened cupboards and refold through drawers. "We're just tidying up," they said with fake smiles. But I caught the way my aunt slipped a brooch into her purse when she thought no one was watching. I clenched my fists, heat rising in my chest. That night, when the house finally fell silent again, I sat alone in my grandmother's room. I picked up the Bible, letting it rest heavy in my hands. As I opened it, a folded envelope slid out, landing softly on the quilt. My heart stopped. It was addressed to me, in my grandmother's handwriting. My fingers trembled as I unfolded the envelope. The paper was yellowed at the edges, the handwriting neat but pressed deep into the page, as though every word had been written with urgency. "My dearest Amara," it began, "if you are reading this, it means I am gone. And it also means they have already descended on this house like vultures. Do not despair. What they want is not truly theirs, and what I have left behind was never meant for them." I swallowed hard, my pulse quickening. "There is another will," the letter continued. "The one they have seen is not the truth. The true will is hidden here, within these walls. I could not trust them. I could only trust you. Follow the clues I have left. Each one will bring you closer. But be cautious. They will take everything if you do not fight. And remember, the one who uncovers the truth is the one worthy to carry it." I pressed the letter against my chest, a wave of heat and fear rushing through me. My grandmother had known. She had seen the greed long before I had, and she had chosen me. The floor creaked outside the room, and I quickly folded the letter back into its envelope, slipping it into my pocket just as my uncle's voice rang out. "Amara, are you still up?" "Yes," I called, forcing calm into my tone. Just cleaning. He appeared in the doorway, eyes sharp, scanning the room, careful not to make a mess. Some of these things might be worth something. His gaze lingered on the Bible in my hands before he finally turned away. My heart pounded until his footsteps faded down the hall. Only then did I breathe again. I looked around the room with new eyes. Every crack in the wall, every loose floorboard, every drawer could be hiding something. The house was no longer just a home. It was a puzzle, and I was the only one meant to solve it. By the next morning, the house was no longer a sanctuary, it was a battlefield. My uncle and Anne arrived with empty bags and sharp eyes. Their voices syrupy, but their movements brisk and practiced. "We're just helping sort things out," my aunt cooed, slipping her shoes off as though she were entering a temple. But minutes later, I caught her sliding a string of pearls into her handbag. My uncle strutted through the hallway like a landlord inspecting his property. He tapped on the old oak furniture, sniffed at the rugs, and muttered about who should rightfully take what. "This desk should go to me," he declared, running his fingers along the surface of my grandfather's study. After all, I was the one who always helped manage things. I clenched my jaw. He hadn't managed anything but his greed. From the kitchen, I heard drawers slamming. My aunt emerged a moment later with silver cutlery bundled under her arm. "Better we keep it safe before outsiders get their hands on it." Outsiders. That's what they called my mother and me. As if blood didn't tie us to this house just as tightly. "Grandma wanted us to have these things," I said quietly, my voice shaking. My uncle turned, his smile sharp. "Oh, Amara, you're young. You don't understand how families work. These things go to those who know how to use them." His eyes glinted. "Not to dreamers." My fist tightened around the envelope hidden in my pocket. If only they knew. If only they realized that the very house they were ransacking held the truth that could strip them bare. But I stayed silent, forcing myself to watch, to memorize every greedy glance, every stolen trinket. Anger burned in me, but so did something sharper, resolve. Because, unlike them, I wasn't here to scavenge. I was here to uncover. And my grandmother's words, echoed in my mind, followed the clues. That night, long after my uncle and aunt had left with their bulging bags, the house seemed to sigh with relief. The silence wrapped around me like a blanket, but I couldn't sleep. My grandmother's letter burned in my pocket, her words echoing, "Follow the clues." I returned to her bedroom, the one room they hadn't dared strip yet. Kneeling by the knit stand, I ran my fingers along the edges, searching for anything out of place. Nothing. My eyes swept across the faded wallpaper, the uneven floorboards. One board caught my attention. Near the foot of the bed, it sat slightly raised, its edges darker as if it had been pried open many times before. My pulse quickened. With trembling hands, I grabbed a hairpin from my pocket and worked it into the gap. The board lifted with a groan, revealing a hollow space beneath. Inside was a small tin box. My breath hitched as I pulled it free, discoating my fingers. I opened it, expecting papers, maybe jewelry. Instead, there was a single brass key, worn with age, tied to a strip of cloth with my grandmother's handwriting scrawled across it. "Trust the hands that raised you." I turned the key over in my palm, heart racing. What did it open? The riddle nagged at me. The hands that raised you. My mind darted through memories, her hands braiding my hair, her hands pressing a Bible into mine, her hands resting on my shoulder as I studied at my grandfather's desk. The desk, it had always stood in the study, massive and immovable, a relic of authority. My uncle had claimed it earlier, but he hadn't searched it. Not properly. I clenched the key tightly, determination settling into my bones. This wasn't just about inheritance. This was about trust, about my grandmother choosing me to see what others couldn't. I replaced the floorboard carefully, hiding the hollow once more. Then, in the stillness of the midnight house, I whispered into the air, "I'll find it, Grandma. I promise." The hunt had begun. The next morning, the house was quiet. My mother had gone to visit a neighbor, and for once, the relatives hadn't appeared to loot. It was the perfect chance. I slipped into my grandfather's study, shutting the heavy oak door behind me. The desk loomed in the center of the room, just as it always had, massive, scarred with decades of ink stains, its drawers stiff from years of use. My hand shook as I slid the brass key into the middle drawer. It turned with a soft click, smoother than I expected, as though it had been waiting for me all along. The drawer opened to reveal nothing but dust. My heart sank until I noticed the faint outline of a false bottom. I pried it up carefully, my breath shallow. Beneath it lay a bundle of papers tied with a faded ribbon. My fingers traced the edges, and when I pulled them free, my chest tightened. Deeds, property documents, receipts, all bearing my grandmother's name. Land I never knew existed. Buildings I had only heard mentioned in whispers. I flipped through, stunned. These weren't debts. They were assets. Assets worth far more than the scraps my relatives had marked us over. But something was wrong. Whole pages had corners torn away. One deed looked as if signatures had been scrubbed, leaving faint smears of ink. Someone had tampered with them. My stomach twisted. Had my uncle already known? Had he tried to erase what was rightfully mine before I even found it? At the bottom of the pile was another note in my grandmother's handwriting. Shaky but firm. If you've come this far, Amara, you are stronger than I ever feared you wouldn't be. Do not trust the smiling faces. The truth is heavier than gold. Keep searching. The floor creaked suddenly, and I stuffed the papers back into the drawer just as the door opened. My aunt stood there, her smile too sweet. What are you doing in here? I forced a calm breath. Cleaning. Her eyes flicked to the desk. She didn't believe me, and I knew then they were watching me. That night, I waited until the house was cloaked in silence. My mother slept in the next room, her breathing soft and even, while I crept back into the study with only a flashlight and the brass key. I didn't dare breathe too loud. Every shadow felt alive, every creak of the floorboards a warning. I knelt by the desk again, pulling out the tampered deeds and spreading them across the floor. But this time, I noticed something I'd missed before. Faint grooves carved into the wood along the back wall of the drawer. A hidden panel. With trembling hands, I pressed against it. The panel slid open, revealing a small compartment wrapped in cloth. My throat tightened as I pulled it out and unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a sealed envelope. Thick, heavy, my grandmother's handwriting, sprawled across the front. The true will of Margaret Ayres. My heart stopped. I clutched it to my chest, tears burning my eyes. This was it. Proof that she had never abandoned us, that she had trusted me to carry her legacy. But before I could even break the seal, footsteps echoed in the hallway, heavy, purposeful. I froze, shoving the envelope under my sweater. The study door creaked open, and there stood my cousin, his smirk sharp and cruel. "What are you doing here so late, Amara?" he asked, his eyes darting toward the desk. "Looking for something?" My pulse thundered in my ears. I forced a laugh, my hands trembling at my sides. "Just couldn't sleep. Thought I'd tidy up." He stepped closer, his gaze narrowing. "You've been spending a lot of time in this room." I tightened my arms around myself, shielding the envelope pressed against my skin. Maybe I just missed Grandpa. For a moment, he studied me, suspicion flickering in his eyes. But finally, he shrugged and stepped back. "Careful," he murmured. "This house has a way of swallowing secrets." When he left, I slumped against the desk, shaking. I had the will, but now I wasn't the only one hunting for it. By the next morning, the house felt like it was holding its breath. My cousin's lingering stare haunted me, and I knew it was only a matter of time before whispers turned into war. I kept the envelope hidden under my mattress, but every time I walked through the house, I felt eyes on me. My uncle's gaze lingered too long. My aunt's smile curled with suspicion. And my cousin never left my side. It happened at dinner. We were gathered around the worn dining table, bowls of stew growing cold as conversation circled endlessly about what to do with the property. My mother sat silent, her shoulders hunched in defeat. Then my uncle leaned forward, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "Amara," he said, "you've been spending a lot of time in the study. Find anything interesting?" My fork clattered against the plate. My mouth went dry. My cousin smirked. She was in there late last night. Looked like she'd found something. The air thickened. My aunt's eyes gleamed as she whispered, "You didn't happen to come across a will, did you?" I froze, my heartbeat drumming in my ears. My mother looked at me in confusion, her brows knitting together. "Amara?" she asked softly. I wanted to deny it, to laugh it off, but their stares pinned me in place. I felt the weight of the envelope beneath my mattress upstairs, burning through the floorboards. Finally, my uncle slammed his fist on the table, making the dishes jump. "You think you can hide things from us? That will belongs to the family. Hand it over." My mother gasped, turning to me. "What will? Amara, what are they talking about?" The room erupted, voices clashing, accusations flying. My aunt hissed that I was trying to steal what didn't belong to me. My cousin threatened to search the house, and my uncle's face reddened with fury. I sat trembling, my grandmother's words echoing in my head. Do not trust the smiling faces. The mask was off, they knew, and there was no turning back now. The shouting in the house didn't stop for days. My uncle and aunt tore through drawers, cupboards, even the attic, searching for the will they were certain I had hidden. My cousin followed me like a shadow, his smirk replaced by a predator's patience. But I had already decided, if I stayed silent, they would crush me. If I spoke, I at least had a chance. So I went to a lawyer. With trembling hands, I placed the sealed envelope on his desk. He broke the wax, his brows lifting as he scanned the pages. "This is authentic," he murmured. "Your grandmother's signature, witnessed, dated, and clear." I swallowed hard. "What does it say?" His eyes flicked up to me. "That everything, the house, the land, the properties, belongs to you. Not your uncle, not your cousins, you." Relief and terror wide in my chest. Of course, the fight didn't end there. My relatives contested it, dragging me into hearings, hurling accusations that I had forged it, that I was a liar, a thief. But the evidence stacked against them. My grandmother's handwriting was verified. Witnesses confirmed her intentions. Even the tampered deeds I had found became proof of manipulation. Each session chipped away at their arrogance. My uncle's bluster faltered. My aunt's venom dried in her throat. My cousin's smirk withered. And through it all, I sat straighter. My mother beside me for the first time with her head held high. The final ruling came on a rainy afternoon, the sky splitting open with thunder as though the heavens themselves bore witness. The lawyer's voice rang clear. "The court recognizes the will of Margaret Ayres as valid. All assets are hereby transferred to her rightful heir, Amara." The room went silent. My uncle's fist clenched uselessly at his sides. My aunt's face drained of colour, and my cousin muttered curses under his breath. But I only closed my eyes, my grandmother's words echoing in my mind. "The one who finds this is the one worthy to carry it." For the first time, I believed her. When the ruling was announced, it felt as if chains had fallen from my shoulders. 4 years, my mother and I had been the shadows of the family, ignored, mocked, treated as burdens. Now, the truth stood like a monument. My grandmother had chosen me. She had seen through their greed and trusted me to carry her name forward. We returned to the house not as intruders, but as heirs. The same halls where I once hid from their voices now echoed with a different sound, my son's. Laughter as he toddled across the worn floors. My mother's soft humming as she opened the curtains wide for the first time in years. The relatives came, of course. They arrived with sour faces, muttering about fairness, about betrayal. My uncle even had the audacity to stand at the gate and declare, "This family will never forgive you." I stood tall, the will in my hand, and met his eyes without flinching. "You don't have to forgive me," I said calmly, "because I did nothing wrong. I only claimed what was always mine." He turned away, but I caught the tremor in his jaw. For the first time, he had no power over me. That evening, I placed my grandmother's Bible back on the knitstand, the same place where I had found her letter. My fingers brushed over the worn leather, and I whispered, "I did it, Grandma." I followed the clues. I carried it. The house no longer felt heavy with shadows. It felt alive again, like it had been waiting for us all along. But more than deeds or land, my grandmother had given me something greater, the courage to fight for my place, to break free of silence, to stand where others wanted me on my knees. And as the sun set behind the house, painting the walls gold, I realized the true inheritance wasn't just wealth. It was dignity, and that no one could ever steal again.